To me, it seems like sometimes churches are reluctant to market sometimes because they maybe marketing feels carnal, or sometimes I've seen where churches may be reluctant to use media to minister because I don't know, it's this weird thing where they just feel like it's not spiritual enough, and so I'm curious if in all the churches that you guys help, is it like a thing of trying to educate them that that social media is not the devil? It is a tool that can be used for good and bad. Have you seen, resistance to that, or do you think churches are pretty open to it?
I've certainly seen the resistance, and there are a number of different reasons. One that comes to mind is the fact that social media as a construct within culture is still very, very new. Mm-hmm. Even the most established platforms like Facebook are only going to be 15 years old when you think about when they were first made available to the public, really like 2007, so like 13 years old. So really, we've got like a prepubescent teenager when it comes to social media. And so when something is that new in culture, generally it isn't taken as seriously by culture as a whole because it's unusual for something that new to be so pervasive. And that's why I say, look, we're living through the biggest communication shift in 500 years because if you think back to 2005, the following things did not even exist: Google Maps, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Spotify, Dropbox, Uber, Airbnb. Crazy. None of those things even existed. Netflix existed, but they were making you rent DVDs at the time. Yeah. And so not in their current forms. And now you think about our everyday lives and trying to imagine going through a single day, let alone a week, without those tools. Well, that's just not my everyday experience whatsoever. And so for something that colossal to take place so fast is unusual. Then you got to consider that the average lead pastor in a Protestant church in North America is in their upper 50s.
Right.
So if you consider their experience, they have been ministering in church now for decades. And for the vast majority of their leadership, they never had to consider or contend with digital platforms. And now they've got younger people like us coming to them and saying, you need to take this seriously. That's a very difficult pill to swallow because it never existed and now suddenly it's the most important thing. But that's the pace of change that we're living through as a culture. And this is happening in every single industry. So we can just look beyond the church world to kind of see what might be on the horizon for a lot of our churches. Back in around 2005, Netflix went to Blockbuster and they said, hey, would you consider acquiring us? This is Netflix asking Blockbuster to acquire them.
Crazy.
And that was because they just were in a tough financial place and Blockbuster was at the top of the game right then. Blockbuster kind of laughed them out of the door and said, yeah, we don't see any reason to bring your services into our experience. We're killing it. We don't need you. And then within the matter of a couple of years, Blockbuster is extinct and Netflix is, one of the biggest media companies in the history of humankind. That happened in less than a decade. That is entirely unusual if you think about the scope of American history, if you think about the scope of human history, for something to happen that quickly. And this also brings into the picture a lot of what we're seeing with deconstruction of faith with younger people, of different faith ideologies that are suddenly confronting maybe what you grew up with. Because it used to be that you would spend your formative years as a Christian, 20 and under, in your tight-knit faith community. And then maybe you'd move to the big city for college, or you'd move, to get a job once you hit your early 20s. And it's at that point that you would be exposed to a ton of new worldviews. And I remember when I went off to college, Eric, I was given a book by my youth pastor, and it was like, How to Stay Christian Through College. Now, mind you, I went to a Bible college, and he still felt the need to give me this book because that was kind of the accepted paradigm. You go off to college, and suddenly all these people that think differently than you. Yeah. Exactly. Well, now you don't have to wait until college. You just have to open your phone.
Wow.
And we think about students nowadays that are so active on TikTok. For them, social isn't so much a platform to be active on. It's recreation. It's their life. Me growing up, my friends and I would go play basketball. We would go play music. We're in a band. Well, nowadays, I think what we would be doing is trying to create a viral TikTok to see which one of us could, get 100,000 views on our next video. And so Again, the rate of change has happened so quickly. To answer your question, this is why the resistance exists. And it's not just in the church world. It's in pretty much every industry. And the more bureaucratic or traditional the industry is, the harder it is to see change. So we see this in education. We see it in healthcare. We see it in the financial industries. You know, I was, this morning is the first. We're recording this on the first of the month. So on the first of the month, I do a bunch of my budget stuff. So I was logging into, my retirement savings, and I was just making sure that everything was set up correctly. All of that is done by myself through an online platform that requires no financial advisor and allows me to do everything digitally.
Crazy.
And what's amazing about that is that, the fees are, let's say, like 0.0 something percent versus 1 or 2%, because I don't have a real human helping me with this anymore. Well, that would have been unheard of 10 years ago. So it's every industry. And this is where senior leadership is such an advantage at churches. If your senior leaders are humble enough to say, look, I don't have all the answers because I haven't grown up with this and I haven't been leading through this for decades, and they're able to find people that can help them, where they're still the ones that are leading with the vision of the church, and they're taking that timeless message. And what we say is take the timeless message and share it through timely mediums. If you have a senior leader and senior leadership like that, then you are very, very fortunate, because it is not, I would say, especially normal.